The National Energy Regulator has now clarified its concurrence with a ministerial directive for a nuclear energy build program. That's after the Department of Minerals and Energy announced a request for proposals for the procurement of nuclear energy. The program has to be at an affordable cost and pace and take into consideration the sector's technological advances. Energy analyst Chris Yelland joins us now to help us make sense of it all. In fact, Chris, good morning. Welcome to the show. We had the Deputy DG in the Department of Minerals and Energy here on this show already announcing that, requests for proposals were at an advanced stage. Does it seem that the department jumped the gun?
Well, in my view, people are indeed jumping the gun and jumping to conclusions that may not be actually justified. And I think the department has fueled these misperceptions. It stems from a decision taken at a NERSA board meeting about 2 weeks ago. But following the board meeting, NERSA did not make its written decision available. And so people jumped onto this without perhaps reading the finer detail of the decision itself. So after a lot of pressure, NERSA has in fact now released this written decision, and it is clear that in fact a concurrence has not yet been reached. What has been reached is a conditional concurrence.
And Chris, you mean by concurrence you mean approval?
Yes, agreement with.
Right,
you see,
right.
in this matter there has to be a joint agreement by the minister and by NERSA. And NERSA issued what is known as a conditional concurrence, which was subject to a number of conditions precedent. So these conditions have not yet been met, and therefore concurrence can only happen once these conditions have been met. And this is what this agreement, the written version of it, the decision taken by NERSA, spells out clearly what these conditions precedent to such concurrence are. And so, yes, I think it's correct to say that we have not yet had concurrence by NERSA. We've had a conditional concurrence subject to a number of conditions.
So the information I have in front of me is actually from the article that you published in the Daily Maverick. So NERSA is only concurring with the decision to commence preparations for a nuclear build. It's not concurring with the commencement of requests for proposals.
Correct. A request for proposals is a formal public procurement.
Right.
That also requires the approval of the National Treasury in terms of a proper cost-benefit analysis, a discussion or an agreement as to the affordability and how it's going to be financed. It also has to give some clarity, for example, on what it is that the procurement is for. For example, are we looking to procure technology, an existing technology, such as these large mega projects that are used, for example, on a Russian Rosatom VVER 1200 megawatt nuclear reactor? Or are we looking at small modular reactors which still have to be developed and commercialized and licensed and tried out and piloted in various countries, and they're not really they're not available commercially at the moment. So one has to clarify actually what it is one's going out to procure. And lastly, as this decision by NERSA points out, new nuclear build is not in IRP, the Integrated Resource 2019 to the years 2030, and therefore it cannot be procured in terms of the IRP, the current IRP, and will have to be a new IRP that considers the years beyond 2030 and looks at the rationality, the very rationality of a new nuclear procurement based on a study of demand for electricity in the years after 2030 as well as how one is going to meet that demand in the years after 2030. Now, that study has not been done yet because we don't have an integrated resource plan that goes beyond 2030. All of this is decided in an IRP that goes beyond 2030, and that hasn't been done yet.
I'm so incredibly confused how we could have jumped the gun to such an extent. In fact, let's just take a listen to that interview I mentioned to you earlier, the Deputy Director General in the Department of Minerals and Energy, and what he had to say.
NERSA, which is a National Energy Regulator, has concurred with a ministerial determination to procure nuclear power of a capacity of 2,500 megawatts in terms of Section 34 of the Electricity Regulation Act, Act number 4 of 2006. So with this decision, then, it becomes very important that we provide the context in which nuclear is being pursued in South Africa. There's a number of policies that guides the government work in dealing with nuclear. Firstly, it's South Africa's nuclear energy policy of 2008, whereby there is a principle number 3, which states that nuclear energy shall form part of South Africa's strategy to mitigate climate change. In addition to that is that the government integrated resource plan for 2019, which is a 20-year electricity plan that comprises of different energy sources, including coal, gas, nuclear, renewables, hydro, and other forms of energy.
So that's the Deputy DG in the Department of Minerals and Energy, Zizamele Mbambo. Chris, what's your response there to what he's had to say? Because he references the nuclear energy policy of 2008. There's no reference there to, as you say, a new IRP post-2030.
The DDG is misleading South Africa. And it's quite clear. You have, I'm sure, seen the actual written decision by NERSA. It's in my article, spelled out in black and white. And it states there that it is conditional upon a number of factors. Therefore, to state that concurrence has been achieved is wrong. A conditional concurrence has been made based subject to a number of conditions that are spelled out very clearly. To say that the IRP includes new nuclear is simply wrong. You only have to look at the IRP 2019 to 2030, and the only nuclear that is in there is the life extension of the existing nuclear power plant at Koeberg, not a new nuclear power, not a new build, not another one at Pacepunt or whatever. So this is playing around with words, and it is really misleading the public, and it's I think the nuclear lobby and the people within the department that are pushing for nuclear are really playing around with words and misleading the public.
I mean, several other issues outstanding, Chris, and I think for the sake of our viewers, there's a lot of sort of technical jargon involved in the issues that we're discussing. For one, I suppose what would be top of mind for taxpayers this morning is, has there been a cost versus benefit analysis on the issue? What are the kinds of technologies that we would be looking to in a scenario like this?
Yeah, well, I think you need to address this question to the National Treasury and to ask them, have they done a detailed cost-benefit analysis? Have they approved a public procurement process for 2,500 megawatts of new nuclear? Have they worked out whether the country can afford it? Have they worked out how it's going to be financed, the business model under which it's going to be procured? But to think that we can go out for a procurement, a public procurement, which in some ways commits South Africa and a number of the bidders to a lot of work and money. I don't believe that the National Treasury has done the necessary yet. And I think that should be addressed to the National Treasury.
Chris Yelland, as always, thanks very much for giving us a sense of how better to understand these various issues. He is an energy analyst as we continue to unpack the issue around concurrence from the National Energy Regulator, which now has clarified its position, essentially putting the brakes on what the department earlier had to say. Chris, thanks very much for your time indeed.